Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
At that dinner table, I smiled while my mother gutted me like a fish in front of everyone. And then I passed the potatoes. Real silver. Polished. Heavy. The kind she only brings out for holidays and judgments. The gravy boat trembled a little as I reached across, my hand steady, my soul quiet, even as I felt her words tear a thin new hole somewhere near my lungs. "You peaked in high school, Rachel," my mother said, lifting her wine glass with the same grace she used to throw shade. Erin's still rising. She looked at me as if she were stating a scientific fact. Gravity. Seasons. Rachel's decline. There were 7 people at that table. 8 if you counted my dignity, which died halfway through the roast beef. My father, of course, was there quiet, sipping bourbon, the kind of man who thought staying silent during conflict counted as virtue. Erin sat across from me, all bright lipstick and subtle smugness, holding her fork like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. Her husband Dave, full of easy charm and midlife bulk, laughed at every comment Marla made like she was delivering stand-up. The kids were off watching Disney in the den, which was good because what came next wasn't PG. But let's rewind a little. It had been 6 months since I last stepped foot in that house. The air still smelled like lavender polish and expired expectations. Same wallpaper from 2 decades ago. Same white couch with the plastic under the slipcovers. I remember looking at the framed photo of Erin's wedding on the hallway wall, and right below it, the old newspaper clipping from my high school prom. Rachel Lynn, Homecoming Queen 1999. One in color, one in yellowed print. One was alive, the other was history. Mom greeted me with a hug that felt like a TSA pat-down. "You look thin," she said. "Everything okay at the coffee shop?" The way she said it, like I was volunteering for charity instead of managing a cafe, lit something in my ribs. But I smiled, because I've learned that smiling is a weapon too. I wore jeans and a sweater. Erin wore a wrap dress like she was headed to brunch with a senator. She made small talk about her firm's latest win in court, the twins' dance recital, Dave's golf game. Mom lit up like the 4th of July. "They're such a strong couple," she said, for no reason. Then she looked at me. "You dating anyone yet?" Like, yet was a time bomb I'd been ignoring. I just said, "Nope," and sipped my wine. Chardonnay. Cheap. Burned on the way down. We moved to the table. Candlelight, china, too much effort. Erin carved the meat. Mom bragged about Erin's new car, a Lexus. "Rachel, you used to love driving," she said, and I could feel the noose tightening. "Remember your little red Civic in high school? You were so driven back then. What happened?" That's when I realized she wasn't asking. She knew exactly what she thought happened. That's when it came. Like a slap disguised as a compliment. "You know, Rachel," she said, chewing slowly, "you peaked in high school." But Erin? Erin's still rising. Her voice floated above the table like smoke from a burning photo album. I didn't flinch. That's the part I'm most proud of. I kept chewing. I even reached for more green beans. "More salt?" I asked. Erin smiled, awkward. Dave looked away. My father sighed so quietly I almost missed it. "Marla?" She just kept eating, unaware that she'd just fed me the last reason I'd ever need to burn it all down. I think a part of me died right then. Not the part that dreams, that part died years ago, after Erin's little accident at college that somehow became my fault. No, this was a different death. A strategic one. The death of patience. Of pretending. Of hoping she'd ever see me as anything more than a broken trophy collecting dust in her mind's basement. I cleared the plates. I even offered to help with dessert. Smiled when she said, "You always were the helper." Said thank you when she handed me a dish towel like it was a crown. Erin talked about Disneyland next spring. Dave nodded like a bobblehead. My father stared at the chandelier, the same one he'd installed after his heart attack, the one she said she always hated but never replaced. I said goodnight around 9. Hugged them all. even kissed Mom's cheek. Her perfume smelled like victory and denial. I got in my old Hyundai, the one with the scratch down the side from when some kid tried to key it and misspelled bitch, and sat in the driveway for a long while before starting the engine. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, heart full of lead. And I thought, this is it. This is the moment you either keep taking it or finally do something. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was hurt, but because I knew exactly what I was going to do. The funny thing is, I didn't hate high school. I know that's supposed to be the setup. The washed-up has-been clinging to her varsity jacket and glory days, but that wasn't me. I genuinely enjoyed it back then, because for a short while, the world actually made sense. You worked hard, you got good grades, you ran faster, smiled wider, showed up every damn day like you wanted it, and the world handed you ribbons, medals, plaques with your name spelled right, and people who clapped when you walked on stage. I was smart, fast, pretty enough, and for a while, unstoppable. But that's the problem with being unstoppable. Eventually, something has to stop you. They used to say I was going to be something. Teachers would pull me aside to ask about my plans. Their eyes lit up like I was a lottery ticket they'd scratched themselves. "Don't waste your potential," one of them said. Mrs. Klein. English. I remember she cried when I got my scholarship letter. Full ride, Stanford, Communications. I still have that letter somewhere. I think it's in the same box as my cap and gown, tucked behind the shoes I never wear anymore. Back then, Erin was just the awkward younger sister, all elbows and hair that couldn't decide whether it was straight or curly. She had braces for 5 years, and Mom still made her wear turtlenecks in spring. She followed me around like a stray puppy, always asking dumb questions, always lingering too long near my door, trying to be part of things that didn't include her. She was harmless, I thought. Just a kid with a crush on the world, trying to figure out where to stand. But there's something dangerous about invisible people. They watch. They listen. They learn how to blend, how to move unnoticed, how to bide their time until the spotlight shifts just a little too far. Stanford was supposed to be the beginning, but life has a funny way of changing the script when you least expect it. One semester in, my mom called to tell me my father was in the hospital. By winter, the scholarship had a stipulation I didn't meet, something about a failed biology elective I didn't even want to take. The school called it policy. I called it bullshit. Either way, the money vanished, and I was back in town by spring. Erin, meanwhile, had just started high school, and suddenly she was blooming like a weed in rich soil. Her teeth straightened. She got contacts. Started debate club. Joined drama. And my mother, God, my mother, acted like Erin had invented ambition. I moved into a basement apartment that smelled like mold and carpet cleaner. Took a job at a bookstore, then another at a call center, then another selling shoes. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I'd bounce back. But you can only bounce so many times before the floor feels permanent. Erin got into college. State school, sure, but she made it sound like Yale. She got honors, internships, law school. I kept hearing about it in secondhand conversations, like I was some distant aunt instead of the sister who once taught her how to apply eyeliner. I remember when I found out about the tuition. My mother let it slip while bragging to one of her church friends on speakerphone. "We're putting in $25,000 a year for Erin's program," she said, like she was announcing a new car. Law school's what, 5 years? That's over 200 grand. I almost corrected her because law school is 3 years, not 5, and 3 times 25 is 75, not 200, but I stopped myself. Let her sound stupid. Let her broadcast her ignorance to the neighborhood ladies who think Bible study is a cover for wine and gossip. I didn't get a cent for Stanford. Not a loan, not a co-signature, not even a cheap suitcase. Just a pat on the back and a warning not to let the California lifestyle get to my head. When I failed, they didn't ask why. They just nodded, like they'd expected it. And Erin? She got new textbooks, a MacBook, trips home every other weekend, and her own room untouched like a museum exhibit. She once failed an entire class and still got a car for Christmas. I failed one biology midterm and lost my entire future. I don't think Erin did it out of spite. That's the thing, she's not the cartoon villain type. No, she's worse. She's the kind of girl who ruins lives with smiles and thank yous, who genuinely believes she's good because she never had to make a hard choice. She's not evil. She's just lucky. But I've learned that luck, when used carelessly, becomes cruelty in slow motion. So I started putting together a gift. Not because it was her birthday, that's in October, and not because I had some grand occasion in mind. Just because I had something she didn't. Memory. Detail. Receipts, literally and figuratively. I pulled out an old scrapbook Mom had made when we were kids, filled with school photos and macaroni art and vacation stubs. I added a few pages, just a few. Nothing flashy. Just moments, snapshots, a ticket stub from that night in college she told everyone she was studying. A printout of a social post she deleted 5 minutes after it went up. A photo that shouldn't exist anymore, one that could be mistaken for harmless fun unless you knew the date, the place, and the man she wasn't supposed to be with. And tucked between those pages, I added just one little truth that no one was ever supposed to find out. The next morning, the house was already too warm, that thick kind of warmth that seeps into your skin and makes your clothes feel tighter than they are, like the walls are pressing in even though no one's saying much. The kind of warmth that pretends to be cozy but feels more like surveillance. I arrived a little early, not too early to seem desperate, but just early enough to seem polite. That perfect middle ground where you can still control the temperature of a room before someone else decides what kind of day it's going to be. Marla, in her usual house dress and full makeup before breakfast, gave me a tight-lipped smile as she opened the door, her eyes already scanning me up and down like I might have forgotten to brush my teeth or iron my soul. "You're punctual today," she said, which wasn't really a compliment, just another passive-aggressive warning shot across the morning air. I smiled, wide and practiced, and held up the bag, a large glossy one with gold tissue paper sticking out the top like flames licking out of a burning secret. "Oh, I brought a little something," I said, feigning breathlessness like I'd just dashed in from the driveway, as if this wasn't rehearsed in my head 50 times the night before. Just some old memories I thought we could all laugh about. The way she raised her eyebrows told me she didn't trust it, but she also didn't want to seem ungrateful. Nothing makes Marla more polite than the possibility of witnesses. Inside the living room, Erin was already seated on the couch, legs crossed in that deliberate way women do when they want to look relaxed, but ready for a camera. Dave was beside her, scrolling through his phone like a man waiting for permission to speak. My father, of course, was in his recliner with the television on mute, watching golf highlights with the kind of blank expression that said he had learned a long time ago that watching grass grow was more peaceful than watching his family burn. I handed the bag to Erin, made a little show of waving off thanks like I was just too humble to accept praise. "It's nothing really," I said. "Just the old scrapbook Mom made for us when we were kids. I found it while going through some boxes and added a few pages." She smiled, that tight, camera-ready smile, but her eyes flickered, that half-second where you wonder if the grenade someone just handed you is actually live. She pulled out the book and flipped it open on her lap, slow and careful like someone defusing a bomb they weren't trained to handle. The first few pages were harmless, first day of school shots, birthday parties, glittery macaroni glued onto pink construction paper, a few of my report cards from when I still brought home straight A's like candy. My mother leaned in, visibly softening at the sight of her favorite timeline, those frozen moments of childhood when control still felt achievable. Erin kept flipping, and I watched her hands very closely. It was around the 7th or 8th added page when she found it, the photo I had slid in like a poison needle in a slice of cake. Her hands stopped moving. Her face went flat, not shocked, not angry, not embarrassed, just cold, as if she were trying to pull the blood back from her cheeks before anyone noticed. But I noticed. I always noticed. Marla, of course, picked up on it immediately, because her talent for sniffing out weakness is unmatched. "What is it?" she asked, already standing. "What are you looking at?" Erin shook her head slightly, as if to dismiss it, but that was the wrong move, because Marla doesn't like to be denied answers, especially not in her own home, in front of me. "Let me see," she said, and plucked the scrapbook from Erin's lap before anyone could object. It took less than 5 seconds. A still frame from a college party, clearly taken with an older phone, just blurry enough to lack sharpness, just clear enough to damn her. Erin, clearly intoxicated, dress halfway up her thighs, pressed against a man who wasn't Dave. Not just not Dave, someone Erin had sworn she never spoke to again after freshman year. His name wouldn't mean anything to anyone else, but it meant something to her. And it sure as hell would mean something to Dave, who now sat very still, like someone trying not to be noticed during a house fire. Marla stared at the photo for a full minute without blinking, her lips parted slightly, like someone tasting something bitter and familiar. Then she turned the page and saw nothing else, no explanation, no caption, no context. Just silence, stretching like elastic, just before it snaps. "Oh!" I said, with the widest, sweetest tone I could muster. I thought everyone had seen that already. Must have been from Erin's Facebook back then, back when people didn't care what got tagged. No one laughed. Dave leaned forward like he might say something, then changed his mind. My father coughed, which in our house is the equivalent of shouting. Erin said nothing. Marla closed the scrapbook very slowly, as if she were sealing a tomb, and handed it back to Erin without making eye contact. We finished breakfast with the kind of quiet usually reserved for funerals and courtrooms. I talked about traffic and weather and mentioned that my coffee shop was hiring part-time, which got me a glare from my mother like I'd asked for money. Erin picked at her eggs like they were foreign food. Dave asked for more orange juice. And Marla? Marla just looked out the window like the neighbor's shrubs were giving her life advice. When I left, I hugged them again, yes, even her, and waved from the porch like the star of a sitcom going off the air. That night, my mother called me, but she didn't say a word. I just heard her breathing, and then she hung up. I didn't do it to hurt her, at least not in the way they all think. That scrapbook, that photo, the pointed smile I wore like war paint, it wasn't born from bitterness, not exactly. What I wanted was something colder than revenge, something quieter than rage. I wanted justice. I wanted balance. I wanted her to feel, for just one moment, what it's like to be seen for what you are instead of what you pretend to be. I wanted her, and our mother, to understand the cost of someone else's ascent, especially when that rise is built on someone else's ruin. It wasn't about bringing Erin down. It was about leveling the ground, if only for a day. The real story, the one no one knows, the one that has lived in my chest like a stone I've never been allowed to set down, starts a long time ago. I was a senior, 2 months from graduation, 2 months from getting out of that house, that town, that life. I had it all lined up, a full scholarship to Stanford, honors across the board, and a reputation so squeaky clean you could see your reflection in it. I had never cheated on a test, never skipped a class, never gave a teacher a single reason to doubt me. But I did have a sister, one with eyes always watching, always learning how to mimic without actually mastering. Erin was a freshman, 15, and already desperate to be someone else. She came to me the night before finals, panicked, pale, practically shaking. Said she had an algebra test the next morning and hadn't studied, begged me to help her. She made it sound like life or death, said she'd fail, that mom would kill her, that she couldn't be the disappointment this time. And like an idiot, I helped. I stayed up with her until 2 in the morning explaining equations she didn't want to understand. But it didn't stop there. The next day, she came home and told me she had copied the answers off my study sheet. Word for word. "It's fine," she said. No one saw, but someone did. And 2 days later, There was an anonymous note on the math teacher's desk claiming I had given Erin the answers, that I'd helped her cheat, that I'd done it deliberately. At first, I laughed. I thought it was some joke, maybe a jealous classmate playing games. But then the principal called me into the office, and the laughter died in my throat. They didn't even let me explain. They called my parents. They called the university. Within a week, my scholarship was under review. Within 2, it was revoked. We cannot support students involved in academic dishonesty, the letter said. And just like that, my future was gone. I confronted Erin that night. I remember the hallway, the smell of our mother's pot roast burning in the kitchen. She looked me in the eye and said she didn't know anything about the note. Swore up and down it wasn't her. Said maybe someone overheard her talking and sent it. She even cried. But the tears didn't match her voice. They sounded practiced, polished, and underneath them I saw it, that flicker of relief. Because I had taken the hit, and she had survived untouched. I never told anyone. Not Mom, not Dad, not a single friend. I let them all believe I screwed up. That I had cheated. That I had cracked under pressure. Marla barely looked at me for weeks, like I was something sticky on the bottom of her shoe. She focused on Erin, of course. She's got promise, she'd say. She's not going to make the same mistakes. The irony never once occurred to her. So when Erin pulled me aside after the scrapbook incident, when she closed the sliding glass door behind her and crossed her arms like some high-powered lawyer in a cheap courtroom drama, I already knew what was coming. Her voice was low, tight, like she was holding her whole world together with dental floss. "Why would you do that?" she asked, teeth clenched so hard I thought they might crack. "Why now? What the hell is wrong with you?" And I just looked at her, calm, still, like I had waited years for this moment, because I had. "Don't worry," I said, letting the words drip slow and smooth. "It's just one photo. You're still rising, right?" She blinked. Once. Twice. Like she was trying to compute something that didn't quite fit in her mental math. For the first time in years, Erin didn't have a comeback. No smart-ass reply. No defensive jab. Just silence, broken only by the sound of our mother's voice inside, bragging about someone else to someone else, probably about Erin's kids or her firm or her endless, gleaming future. I could see it in Erin's eyes, not guilt, not even shame really, but something close to recognition. Like she finally saw me not as the sister she used to beat in board games, but as someone who remembered. Someone who kept score. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I just walked past her, through the glass door, back into the house that had never felt like mine, and I picked up my purse and said goodbye. My mother didn't even look at me when I left. She was too busy scrolling through her phone, probably checking Facebook for new comments on her last post about the grandkids. When I got home, I made tea and sat on my porch for a long time, listening to the wind and the distant hum of lawnmowers. It felt different, the air. Like something had been lifted, not gone, not healed, but lighter somehow. The next day, I heard my mother was in tears. No one knew why, but I did. When I got back to my apartment, the quiet hit me like a wave crashing against my ribs, not loud, not violent, but weighty in a way only silence can be after a storm you set loose with your own hands. I tossed my keys into the chipped ceramic bowl by the door and took off my shoes like I was peeling off the last pieces of the person I had to be back in that house, obedient daughter, supportive sister, ghost of potential past. The apartment still smelled faintly of cinnamon from the candle I'd burned the night before, and the scent felt strange now, too soft for the sharpness of the things I had just done. I didn't immediately check my phone. I made coffee first, because there's something soothing in the ritual, in the scoop and stir, the wait for the water to boil, the click of the mug on the counter, something solid and real when the rest of life feels like a stage play written by a bitter drunk. Outside, the sky was that dull gray that makes everything look like it's been drained of color, but I didn't mind. Gray days are honest. They don't lie to you the way sunshine does. When I finally picked up my phone, there was only one message. It was from my father, short, understated, and somehow sadder than if he'd said nothing at all. Your mother's been quiet. Maybe it's for the best. I stared at the screen for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could I possibly say that would matter now? That it wasn't about hate? That it wasn't even about her? That it was about decades of weight pressing down on my chest until I couldn't breathe without tasting blood? Instead, I deleted the message. Not out of cruelty, but because keeping it would have felt like giving something back, and I wasn't ready to return anything yet. Some debts take longer to clear than others. Some you carry just to remember what they cost you in the first place. I took my coffee to the window and stood there, watching people walk their dogs, run their errands, live their uncomplicated Saturday lives. Somewhere across the street, a woman in a yellow sweater was planting something in a window box, lavender maybe, or some other flower that thrives even when ignored. I wondered, for a brief moment, if she had a mother who ever told her she was enough. I suppose this is the part where I'm supposed to feel guilty, to second-guess everything, to ask myself whether I went too far or made things worse than they already were. But the truth is, I don't. Not even a little. Because it wasn't just the photo. It wasn't just the scrapbook. That was just the prologue. The real chapter hadn't even started yet. The real move, the one that mattered, was in the mail 2 days ago. A simple manila envelope. No return address. Inside, a handful of printed screenshots, not doctored, not edited, just the raw truth pulled from a phone Erin thought she'd deleted everything from. But nothing is ever really deleted. And I have a way of finding things when I'm motivated. They were messages. Intimate, flirtatious, clearly from a time when she and Dave were already married. Clearly sent to someone who wasn't Dave. And not just a one-off lapse in judgment, no, this was a pattern. Late-night chats, promises, that awful language people use when they think nobody else is listening. I mailed them to Dave with no note. No explanation. Just the images. Let them speak for themselves. Let them rot in his gut until he couldn't ignore them anymore. I didn't need to be there for the explosion. Sometimes the best kind of revenge is the one that happens in a room you're not even in. Peaking in high school wasn't the worst thing. That's what people always assumed about me, that I lived in the shadow of a crown I wore once and lost, that my life flatlined at 18 and I never got back up. But no, the real tragedy is pretending you never fell. Pretending you rose clean while standing on someone else's back. Pretending your whole world is built on effort when it's really built on silence, secrets, and someone else's sacrifice. I don't know if Erin's marriage fell apart. I don't know if Dave said anything or just swallowed the betrayal like another glass of lukewarm wine. I don't know if my mother confronted her or if she just turned her disappointment into some silent punishment, like she always did with me. Maybe they'll pretend nothing happened. Maybe they'll blame me, they usually do. But that's the thing about telling the truth in just the right way. It doesn't matter if people believe you. The truth still does its job. I took another sip of coffee, now cooling fast, and let myself smile. Not big, not triumphant. Just enough to know that I could. That I'd earned it. That for once, the weight in my chest wasn't mine to carry anymore. Revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes, it's just watching the house get cold. Real cold.